So today we were out at the last practice. Unfortunately, yes, this is the last practice report that you and I will be able to talk about because you know what, man? Next week we're talking all about USC. Game one, what do we think? We're finally going to be starting to break down the games that LSU will play. Next week's going to be very, very fun. Please be tuned in for that. Clearly you will be. Before we get into any of the weeds or anything that was going on, I want to explain some things that we wrote in the practice report. If you're on the forum, ayssnetwork.com/forum, there are a couple of things that I put in there. When I'm writing notes, I write their number sometimes instead of their name because today they were doing some scout team work stuff and guys changed their jersey numbers to replicate USC. So if you were on there and you were confused, I'm sorry, but I will tell you tonight who these players were. There were some guys out today. Sage Ryan was out. Looked like maybe, he didn't really look like he was hurt. He was walking around. But Miles Frazier, the right guard, was in a walking boot along with Wes Weeks. Tyree Adams was in at right guard. So again, we talk about today, even with a couple of bumps and bruises, and Chris Hilton was out with a bone bruise. I think that if a game was today, Chris Hilton would go. Maybe the other two would not. Sage Ryan would probably be out there with a grade 1 hamstring. I think that some of these are just knick-knack, paddywhacks, give a dog a bone type of injuries. Guys in walking boots, it is what it is. I think that, barring that you have any injuries on Saturday or barring anything bad happening next week, you've been, knocking on wood, moderately healthy. But it does go to show that what we talked about in the last practice report that you and I had, even in going into tonight's, Tyree Adams, outside of center, is going to be in. And even if DJ Chester were to go down, Tyree Adams is coming in because Garrett Dellinger is moving over to center. I do think that Tyree has had a really good camp. I do think, personally, I would want to see Emory Jones move to guard and then Tyree move out to tackle. I think Emory would have better success at guard than maybe Emory does at times. If I'm very much nitpicking along the offensive line, that would be the thing that I would nitpick on. However, what am I going to tell Brad Davis that he doesn't know? I'm sure that there's been conversations. I'm sure that they've had discussions about that. I'm just being nitpicky because I think that Emory could be better at guard than Tyree can. And I think that Tyree can be better at tackle than him being at guard. Regardless, he was at right guard today with Miles Frazier being out. We went into team period 1, and something very interesting happened. You and I have had more discussions about this defensive line in the running game than mainly anything. And in that first team period, LSU offensively tried to establish the run. And I got to say something. I did not think going into today that me and you would be having this conversation. That's why we're out there. Sean Washington, have yourself a day, young man, because that dude was wrecking shop. I know some of you saw the clip of during the run game period. So when LSU goes O-line, D-line, and linebackers, running backs, and, they're just trying to stop the run. They're trying to score touchdowns if you're the offense. That there was a clip out there of Bo Davis screaming at Sean Washington, "Hey, your head coach is screaming at you, telling you good job. You're starting to make some plays. Talk to BK." And BK's all in Sean Washington's face. "Hell yeah, Sean. Hell yeah. Light their ass up. Let's go." Because to start off practice, Sean Washington had 2 tackles for loss in the backfield and got one on Emory Jones and got one on Tyree Adams. Brother was playing today. My man was out there making some noise. You get in the run game period, and he did the same thing. And then when his D-line coach and then his head coach comes over there celebrating the things that he's doing, the very next play, he gets double teamed by Tyree Adams and DJ Chester. He splits the double team and gets another tackle for loss. Let me just tell you this right now. I don't give two Rudy Poos on any God-given earth of what happens in the season. If you got a defensive lineman that can do that once, twice, three times a game, guys, you're gonna get to 10 wins. Now, before I get on this pedal to the metal, LSU going to a playoff, it's one practice. It's 2 periods. But it makes you start feeling better that you have the coaching staff that's starting to develop defensive tackles in the interior. Brian Kelly brought this up today about Harold Perkins, but I'm going to bring this up about Sean Washington for just this quick second. Guys, this offensive line is really good. I think Tyree Adams is really good. I think the guy's going to be an NFL player. He may be in the NFL for a decade. I really believe that. I think that kid can play. And you know what? I feel the same about DJ Chester. And I feel the same. I think Garrett Dellinger is going to be an NFL guy. It did not matter. Sean Washington, congratulations, man. You had yourself a day. I'm happy and proud for you. But you start off the team period with Josh Williams running the football. And it's interesting because right when we got out there was a sense of urgency that I had not felt from this coaching staff through all camp. Now, why is that? I think the sense of urgency for LSU picked up from the coaching staff today, mainly due to the fact, guys, you're getting close to being a week away from you being in a real live situation against another team in your season being here. BK being vocal, Brad Davis being vocal, Bo Davis being vocal, Kevin Peoples, who's probably the most vocal person out there, being vocal, Joe Sloan, Cortez Hankton. The intensity from the coaching staff has been, I don't want to say even keel because it hasn't been even keel, but if there's a couple of more notches that they could have gone up in today as far as their intensity on development, it was there today. Guys, it was a no holds bars from the defensive side of things. And excuse my language, let's ask some stuff up. Now, I know of one player that heard that message, that being Sean Washington. But Josh Williams, to start off team period, gets a run for 5, and BK's jumping all over Garrett Dellinger's ass saying, you missed Harold Perkins. You can't miss Harold Perkins. I know it's a run for 5. It could have been a touchdown. But Harold Perkins out-athleted you and stopped Josh Williams in the hole. I know it's a gain of 5. You will take a gain of 5 on a run play. But don't forget about Harold Perkins because we're going to have a discussion on him too. We talked about Sean Washington having a couple of TFLs. Josh Williams does break off a long one. Look, man, I think that you are going to so in the first 3 plays, you have 3 runs. Sean Washington gets a TFL. You get a run for 5, and then Josh Williams bust one for 17. I think that BK is just 100% accurate on what they want to do. Guys, they want to run the football. And I don't know if I necessarily mind the run for 17 because you get a good stop. Sean gets a TFL, a couple of pair of TFLs in the opening period. And then Josh Williams breaks off one. You know, we don't talk about Josh Williams because he's all reliable, right? He is the Toyota Tacoma of running backs. It's probably not a great way to put him, but he's a vehicle that's going to, like those old school vehicles, those old Toyotas that get you 400,000 miles before they shit the bed. That's Josh Williams. Josh Williams is the most reliable human being on this team because he's going to come to practice every day and give you everything he's got. Guys, he's going to be your first team running back to start off against USC. Now, you're going to rotate a lot of backs in there. Guys, you are going to need Josh Williams more than anything this year. They have been throwing him the ball out of the backfield, and today he had a really good day running the football. For the last, I'd say, 3 plays of the first part of team period, LSU went into 12 personnel. In case you don't know what 12 personnel is, it's okay. It is 1 running back, 2 tight ends. And I think that it's just going to be so different from what we saw a year ago. And I think the reason that you're able to go so much 12 personnel is just how good Kamorian Pimpton is. You know what you're going to get from Mason Taylor, and I think Mason Taylor in and of himself is going to have a good year. But I think Kamorian Pimpton gives you that ability to where you can go out there and not feel bad about anything that you're doing. Pimpton's ability to block from one year to the next, from last year to this year, has been the biggest leap that he's taken. You knew what he could do as a pass catcher. You knew what he could do when you put him out in the slot or you put him in the red zone, the freakish plays that he'll have. What you didn't know is that could you put him in a game and him not be a liability? And the truth is he hasn't been. But Pimpton catches a ball out in the flat for 8. The kid's just been overall very solid. Sean Washington for a tackle for loss on 27. So 2 of those TFLs coming from Sean Washington. John Emery goes for 8. First team unit, because they were splitting first and second team reps inside there. The first team unit comes in with the second team offense. And the defense really just stood out. Penn had a PBU. He then had a tackle for loss. Burns had a PBU. You gave up a run of 7. J.K. Johnson, who was in for Sage Ryan. That's key because Sage Ryan's out. Who is your third boundary corner? Right now it is J.K. Johnson. J.K. Johnson breaks up a pass on a screen, and Deshaun Womack, who a lot of people have asked me questions about, how has his camp been, comes up with a sack on a very exotic formation that Blake Baker runs out there. So in these team periods, they're running a lot of scout team 1s versus 2s. And you really like that Sean Washington is making plays, throughout practice. After he made those really good plays, he went over with the 1s. Like, hey, man, if you're going to play like that, we're going to put you in here. But defense didn't give up shit. And they certainly didn't give up shit to the second team or the scout team, nor should they have. So that's how we start off today. We go throughout practice here, and look, they ran a lot of, individual drills, tackling drills. They went to a punting drill. I'm not going to bore you on talking about punting again. A lot of you inside the chats and the video clips that we have put on YouTube, a lot of you have said, Blake, we get it. You love Blake Oschendorf. Guys, I just think that the punt game and return game is just going to be such a big deal for you this year. They went to a punt game, and Blake Oschendorf had 3 punts inside the 3-yard line. Yes, you heard what I just said, correct? I didn't put it in the practice report because I felt like I kept repeating myself. One of his punts that he had today, LSU was on the 30-yard line. He literally kicked it to the opposite 10. In the air, the opposite 10. Guys, that is unreal. That is just unreal that you can be able to flip field position like that. Let's see what they do, man. I mean, the kids had a very, very solid camp. But you went through some individual drills. You went through some tackling drills. You went through run game. The offensive line today did get in the run game period. So when your defensive line versus your offensive line in the running game, when that one happened, the O-line really dominated at times. Guys, it was Sean Washington that really stood out in that period. He was the only one really that I could tell that was making plays in the backfield. You had, Harold Perkins out there making some tackles as well. But Sean was just so disruptive in the running game period on this first-team offensive line. I don't know what to make of it. You want to see, and BK has brought this up multiple times this camp, when you see a guy have a really good day, like we saw Ashton Stamps have a really good day a couple of weeks ago. We've seen Harold Perkins have multiple really good days. And what you want to see from a guy like Sean Washington is, and I know that we're not going to be out there to see it, can you replicate this? Because if you can replicate this, you're going to have to put him out there on early downs and say, go get after it. If you can do this against our first-team offensive line, get after their ass. Here's the thing, and I know that this has been the Sean Washington, segment, if you will, but the thing that I noticed with him was technique. The technique that I saw with him in the beginning of camp versus what I saw from him today was his pad level was a lot lower. He was getting his hands on the offensive lineman, extending. Like when you're a defensive lineman, guys, you want to extend and you want to shed and get off. Do a move, shed, get off. But you got to extend, see where the ball carrier is going, and go. And he was getting double teamed and just made plays. Very happy for him. We go in 11-on-11 period. So in the middle of practice, ones versus ones went after. And the defense would get the offense to start it off. Offense would go ahead and respond in just a minute. But this is how you start off 11-on-11 period. Hitch route to Kyron Lacey. Williams runs for 3. Swing pass to Josh Williams for 6. Williams on a run, no gain. Harold Perkins on the tackle. So you have a run for 3, a run for 6, or a pass for 6. So it's 3rd and 1. 3rd and 1, and Harold Perkins meets Josh Williams in a hole on an inside dive. No gain. Guys, it would have been 4th down. They proceeded as if he got the 1st down because they were trying to move the chains to get different work in. Harold Perkins has continued to make plays on 3rd down. And if you, the biggest thing that you got to do this year that you have not done the last 2 years, get off the godforsaken field on 3rd down. I thought that by Harold Perkins on a 3rd and 1, tackling Josh Williams at the line of scrimmage, creating a 4th down, for me, in my humble opinion, was the thing that I needed to see from Harold Perkins. Like, listen, you've had some really good days. You've had some really good situations. Are you going to be consistent and this be a daily thing? He did it last week. And, guys, the first day that we're back out there today, he's doing it again. I feel like that I should stop for a moment and go on the rant that I want to go on about Harold Perkins. You know what? I'm going to do it. Because Brian Kelly was asked a question today about Harold Perkins. And yes, some of you will say, Blake, you made this a big deal today on social media. You're damn right I did. You're goddamn right I did. Because last Thursday I came out here. We have done the last 2 weeks players of the week. And the first one was Ashton Stamps, and last week's was Harold Perkins. BK was asked a question in his press conference today about Harold Perkins, to which he said he's been very tough for this really good offensive line to block. No kidding. And that's not a shot at BK, me saying it like that at all. No kidding. Guys, at the inside linebacker position on a 3rd down, can you imagine Perkins meeting a running back in the hole and stopping him for a 4th down? I just pray that translates. It's been there all camp. It's been there. And I love that the things that you and I talked about, literally what you and I had a discussion on last Thursday, was about Perk and him doing all those things. It makes me feel good that the head coach at LSU, a head coach that has 33 years of experience, that me and him are seeing the same things in reference to arguably the best player on your team. BK is not fudging that. He's not holding back punches. The truth has been, Perk has been in a position where he's been unblockable at times, and he's been able to get stops on 3rd and 4th down. That is what you love to see. Now, here's the caveat, if there is one, if I see it. Is that going to translate on the field? I don't know. I really don't know. But I know that if you're doing it in practice consistently, that gives me hope. Guys, you got to have hope right now on the camp that Perkins has had. It gives me hope that he can do it in games. And if your best player on your team, guys, I think he's the best player on your team. I do. You could argue that it's Will Campbell. Very good argument. Let's say that they're 1A, 1B. 1A and 1B. And I'm completely fine with saying Will Campbell's the best player on your team. That's fine too. But he's certainly the best player that you have defensively. When he's the guy that's making the plays for you when you need it most, an 11-on-11 period, I freaking love it. Guys, he was my player of the week last week. If there's a player of the week that I would put in for this one, we're only going to be out of one practice. It's going to be Perk. What he's doing in the running game, what he's doing in coverage. I just hope for his sake, I hope for LSU's sake, I hope for everybody's sake that translates. So a 3rd down and 1, Harold Perkins makes the stop. So they go to 1st and 10. Daniels in the flat. So they run CJ Daniels is in the slot. They run a play action out of shotgun where CJ Daniels comes down the line of scrimmage and goes to the flat. The outside wide receiver runs an out route, that being Kyron Lacey. And Ashton Stamps is in zone coverage on the far right side. Stay with me. So you have CJ Daniels in the slot, play action, and when the play action happens, you have CJ Daniels coming down in the flat. You have an out route by Kyron Lacey on the outside in zone coverage. A safety's over the top on Kyron Lacey. Garrett Nussmeier throws the ball to CJ Daniels in the flat. Ashton Stamps was right there when he caught the football, and if they would have been full tackle, full going on, CJ Daniels would have been decleated. Joe Sloan lost his ever-living mind on Garrett Nussmeier for not throwing the out route to Kyron Lacey. I fully disagree with everybody's assessment on that play. What they were in was cover 2. And I think that Ashton Stamps baited Garrett Nussmeier, and he was in a great position to make a play on either guy. Either guy, he was in a really good position to make a play. I tell you, man, that kid has made plays. And what's interesting with a guy like Stamps is it's not the fact that he's making the play or making a big hit that I love the most. What I loved about the play with CJ Daniels going into the flat and having a catch is that Ashton Stamps knew exactly what to do, when to do it. Right? So last year, your DBs had no idea what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Had no clue. They couldn't get assistance if they had a button with life alert. You know what the life alert button is? Like when your granny falls down and hurts her hip and she's got that thing around her neck and she hits the life alert button to call the ambulance. You couldn't find people who know. I mean, like, you couldn't get help in the secondary if you had a life alert button. That in and of itself. And to give Corey credit, man, to give this defensive staff and Blake Baker credit, the guys knowing their assignments is far and above different than where it was a year ago. At least in camp it has been. So CJ Daniels in the flat, no gain, tackled by Stamps. Stamps would make another play on the very next play, and he would get a tackle for loss on a screen route to CJ Daniels as well. So that was your second team period, 11 versus 11. I mean, you got down to the red zone, but you got multiple stops if you're this defense in that first team period, man. I mean, you awarded the offense a first down on 3rd and 1 when Harold Perkins made a stop, and I got to be real with you. I don't know what Ashton Stamps would have done if you would have been in a real game and he would have been able to make those plays. All right, so let's move to 7-on-7, and let's move to O-line versus D-line. Guys, I didn't put anything in our practice report on them, and here's why. You had the first team offense going against the second team defense when it came to 7-on-7. They got abused, and some of those guys were walk-ons too. It was I put second team in there, but there was a lot of scout team guys in there as well. The scout team guys got cooked. I mean, they had 2 walk-ons at corner in 7-on-7. I mean, it was like if you put college football on junior varsity and ran all go routes, right? Like, I mean, it was an or freshman, whatever the weakest difficulty it is that you can play. That's what it was like. Nuss was carving them boys up, but yeah, dudes wide ass open. Thought Ricky Collins, though, in 7-on-7 made some really good throws, really solid throws. But I don't know how much of a strength 7-on-7 is for a guy like Ricky. All right, let's move to team period 3. We'll get to all your thoughts, questions, concerns after this. Team period 3. Listen, there has been a lot of talk about this offense. Like, hey, man, the defense is making stops. The defense is doing this. The defense is doing that. And, you know, on Thursday, no, actually it was Monday. On Monday, you and I had a conversation. If there's one thing that I wanted to see on Wednesday was when the scrimmage or team portion 11-on-11 happened, I need to see your offense go down the field and score. It's about time you go down the field and score. In the last team period, they would. And I thought it was if you're going to ask me what was the best drive that this offense had all camp, it happened today in the last team period, 11 versus 11. They started off by Kyron Lacy catching a hitch route for 8. Josh Williams would get a run for 5 yards, tackled by Harold Perkins again. Parker was in the practice for Chris Hilton, who was out. Let me stop right there for just a minute. Kyle Parker is interesting because they have been using Xavier Thomas. They've been using Aaron Anderson in the slot. When they need a guy in the slot, either Anderson or Xavier Thomas is going to run in there based off of the personnel that you're going to run out there. If you need somebody on the boundary in a bigger personnel, like when you go on Kyron Lacy, CJ Daniels, and you would go Chris Hilton, the guy that has been behind Chris Hilton has been Kyle Parker. Kyle Parker had a very solid day. He's going to play some, man. Kyle's definitely going to play some. I do think that Kyle has had an issue with drops. Early in camp, he had like 3 drops in one day. He had 2 drops in another. There was a situation in a team period when Chris Hilton was getting a breather that on a go route, he beats J.K. Johnson. He drops a touchdown from Nussmeier. Today, he looked really solid. So the first 3 plays, you have a hitch route for 8 to Kyron Lacy, a run by Williams for 5, and an in route, for 12 by Kyle Parker. Kyle had a really solid day. You line it right back up. Josh Williams gets another run for 10 yards. Brad Davis, after there had been the O-line in the interior had been kind of pushed around to start the day off, right after Kyle Parker caught that pass, Brad Davis lost his godforsaken mind on the interior of that offensive line. I don't know what he said. I know that he was chewing their ass. And it's funny, when coaches start chewing on players' asses, no pause. Williams gets a run right up the gut for 10. It's funny how that works, boy. Funny how that works. Brad has been all over this offensive line all camp. You want to be great? Show me what great looks like. Here's where I thought Nuss got bailed out, because you're moving the football down the field And even though I think it's the best drive that you've had all camp, Nuss had a very bad throw at the 30-yard line on your own 30-yard line that almost got picked by Ashton Stamps. Ashton Stamps on a hitch route by Kyron Lacey read the route, and if he was there a half second sooner or a 2.25 seconds sooner, it would have been a pick six. They were in man-to-man coverage. Kyron Lacey on the outside, the only wide receiver out there, runs a hitch route, and it's technically a PBU, but Ashton Stamps reads the route, almost picks it off. He's like reaching out, trying to pick it, tips his fingers, batted down pass, incomplete. Josh Williams has a run for no gain, times 2. So you have Nuss Williams has a rush for no gain. So Nuss, bad pass, almost gets picked off by Stamps. Williams has a rush for no gain. And then Caleb Jackson has a rush for 8. So another situation where you get down into the red zone, you get down close to the 20-yard line, and this offense starts sputtering just a little bit, but this defense starts picking it up. It's 4th down again. And, we were talking as the media on the sideline. I think it was Jarrett Roser maybe, and some other people like Bryce Kuhn. I was like, the last time they went 4th down, Harold Perkins made a stop. I wonder if they're going to throw the football here or if they're going to run it right at them. What are they going to do? But a very critical situation to end practice. Garrett Nussmeier on 4th down, what is he going to do? Corner route. Kyle Parker, back of the end zone, bang, touchdown on J.K. Johnson. That's how you respond, man. That is how you respond. And I know that Nuss almost got a pass picked off. The reality of this situation is that he didn't. Is that on 4th and 3 on a corner route from 20 yards out, he hits a wide open Kyle Parker for a touchdown. Thought it was a really beautiful call play by Joe Sloan. And that's how, if that's the last thing that I see of this team at practice, that's how I want to end it. So, yeah, that's how it ended.